Identity, credential, and access management systems include tools and policies that allow organizations to manage, monitor, and secure access to valuable resources. Security incidents and data breaches can occur due to inadequate protection of credentials, lack of regular automated rotation of cryptographic keys, passwords, and certificates, lack of scalable identity, credential, and access management systems, failure to use multi-factor authentication, or failure to use strong passwords. Malicious actors disguised as legitimate users, legitimate operators, or developers can read, exfiltrate, modify, or delete data. They can issue control plane and management functions. They can even snoop on data in transit, as well as release malicious software that appears to originate from a legitimate source. As a result, insufficient identity, credential, and key management can enable unauthorized access to data and potentially catastrophic damage to organizations or end users. The Cloud Controls Matrix covers multiple controls for strong identity and access management practices to mitigate this threat. You could secure your accounts by including two-factor authentication and limit the use of the root account. Practice the strictest identity and access controls for cloud users and identities. Segregate and segment accounts, virtual private clouds, and identity groups based on business needs and the principle of least privilege. You should also rotate keys, remove unused credentials or access privileges, and employ central programmatic key management. Amazon Relational Database Service, or Amazon RDS, is a distributed relational database service by Amazon Web Services. Using some of the controls described in this tutorial, I will briefly demonstrate how to securely create, store, and rotate the master database password using two AWS services, the AWS Key Management Service and the AWS Secrets Manager. So I'll choose to create a standard database. I'll select Aurora MySQL compatible as my engine type, and I'll choose the dev test template. I'll give my database cluster a name, so call this Cloud Brewery DB. For the master username, I'll just use admin. I'll select manage master credentials, that is the password, in AWS Secrets Manager. With AWS Secrets Manager, instead of specifying the database password in your application or code, your application could instead make an API request to Secrets Manager to retrieve the secret or the password programmatically. Under select the encryption key, I'm going to specify the default KMS key. And this key is what Secrets Manager creates, or you can also provide a customer managed key management service that you create, but this allows you to further encrypt the DB password provided by Secrets Manager. So I'm going to use serverless. I'll set the maximum Aurora capacity units to 2 to minimize cost. I'll leave everything as default and I'll just create the database. So this is going to take a little while. So while the writer instance is still being created, I can go into Cloud Brewery and scroll down and select the configuration. At the bottom, it tells me that my master credentials is located at this Secrets Manager ARN. So if I click Manage in Secrets Manager, I have the option to rotate the secret immediately. For example, currently there's a rotation schedule of 7 days. So meaning that after 7 days, a new password will be generated and I'll need to retrieve this password in order to access the database. Now I can choose to rotate the secret immediately or edit the rotation. So this allows me to specify, I can say I want the password rotated every 1 day and also specify an hour duration. As you can see here, this rotation is managed by an Amazon or AWS Lambda function. You don't need to configure this function. AWS provides that function for you. Now, if I have applications, I can use this code snippet in my application and grant it the permissions needed for it to programmatically retrieve the database credentials from Secrets Manager and use that retrieve password or secrets to access the database.